Imagine this. You're 24 years old. You've spent your entire life, every early morning, every grueling practice, every injury, every sacrifice, chasing one dream. And you got it. Millions of dollars in your bank account. Your name on the back of a jersey. Tens of thousands of people chanting that name every Sunday. You made it. And then, in a single night, you threw it all away. Not because of bad luck. Not because of an injury. Not because someone else took it from you. Because of a gun. Since the year 2000, weapons charges have become one of the most common and most career-ending crimes in the NFL's arrest database. We're not talking about rumors. We're not talking about allegations. We're talking about handguns found in cars, weapons drawn on valets, a superstar who shot himself in the leg at his own birthday party. In this video, we're going inside the cases that rocked the league, the arrests, the trials, the suspensions, and in some cases, the prison sentences that prove that a contract in the NFL is no shield from your worst decisions. Stay with us, because some of these stories are going to shock you. Let's start with the one that put the entire conversation on the national map. Plaxico Burress, November 28, 2008. Less than 10 months after one of the greatest upsets in Super Bowl history, when Plaxico Burress caught the go-ahead touchdown to end the New England Patriots' perfect season, the Giants wide receiver walked into the Latin Quarter nightclub in Manhattan. He was there to celebrate, to have a good time. He would leave in an ambulance. Here is what happened, according to court documents and police reports. Burress had entered the club carrying a loaded .40 caliber Glock handgun. He did not have a valid permit to carry the weapon in New York City. At some point during the night, the gun, tucked into the waistband of his sweatpants, began to slip. He reached down to grab it, and the gun discharged. The bullet entered his right thigh. Burress had shot himself. Now, let's be clear about something. In terms of the physical injury, Burress was lucky. He survived. He recovered. But what followed was a legal and professional catastrophe that effectively ended what should have been a Hall of Fame career. Burress was taken to New York Presbyterian Hospital. Within hours, word had reached the Giants' front office. Within days, it had reached the entire country. New York City, at the time, had some of the strictest gun laws in the United States. Carrying an unlicensed, loaded firearm in the city was a Class C felony. The mandatory minimum sentence, 3.5 years in prison. Mayor Michael Bloomberg went public almost immediately, calling for prosecution and making clear he expected no special treatment for a celebrity. The Giants suspended Burress without pay. The NFL launched its own investigation. And Plaxico Burress, a man who had just caught the most famous touchdown in recent Super Bowl memory, was facing years behind bars. He pleaded guilty in August 2009. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He served 20 months. Think about what he gave up. He was 32 years old when he was released from prison, still young enough to play. But 2 years out of the league at the peak of his athletic life is an eternity in the NFL. He did come back. The Jets signed him in 2011. He played 2 more seasons, a shadow of what he had been. But the Plaxico Burress who caught that Super Bowl touchdown, that version of him never played another snap. The lesson the league was supposed to learn from the Burress case was simple. No one is above the law. Not the Super Bowl hero. Not the fan favorite. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The lesson didn't stick. Because less than 15 years later, the NFL would find itself in the middle of a weapons arrest crisis that dwarfed anything that came before it. That brings us to Frank Clark. If Plaxico Burress represents the cautionary tale, Frank Clark represents something arguably more troubling. A pattern. Frank Clark is, or was, one of the most feared pass rushers in the NFL. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Kansas City Chiefs. He earned a 5-year, $105 million contract in 2019. He is also, by any reasonable measure, the NFL player with the most documented history of weapons offenses in recent memory. Let's walk through the timeline. March 2021. Clark is pulled over in Los Angeles while riding in a vehicle with no license plate. Officers conduct a search. They find 2 guns. He is arrested. 3 months later, June 2021, Clark is arrested again. Another gun charge. Let that sink in. Within a single offseason, less than 90 days apart. One of the highest-paid defensive players in the NFL was arrested twice for weapons violations. The NFL's response was a 2-game suspension. 2 games. For a player on a $100 million contract, a 2-game suspension is a financial inconvenience. Clark pleaded no contest to the charges. He was sentenced to 1 year of probation and 40 hours of community service. He returned to the field. But Clark's history with weapons and the law didn't start in 2021. Go back further. In 2014, as a member of the University of Michigan football team, Clark was arrested for domestic violence. He pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct, but the assault charges were dropped. He was dismissed from the team. Then in 2012, before he even reached college, Clark was caught up in a home invasion charge. And yet, he was still drafted in the second round of the 2015 NFL Draft. He still got that $100 million deal. He still won Super Bowl rings. The Frank Clark case forces an uncomfortable question about the NFL and about professional sports more broadly. At what point does a pattern of behavior become disqualifying? Clark's legal history spans more than a decade. It involves weapons, violence, and repeated run-ins with law enforcement. And through all of it, teams kept signing him because he could rush the passer. That is not an accusation. That is a documented fact. And it tells you something about where the NFL's priorities actually lie, no matter what the press releases say. Next, Damon Arnett. There are stories in the NFL that are frustrating. And then there are stories that are genuinely difficult to watch unfold. Damon Arnett falls into the second category. In April 2020, the Las Vegas Raiders selected cornerback Damon Arnett with the 19th overall pick in the NFL Draft. 19th overall, a top 20 selection, a vote of confidence from a franchise willing to invest a future on a 23-year-old. Within 18 months, that investment would be in ruins. Arnett's time in Las Vegas was marked by injury, inconsistency on the field, and a growing series of incidents off of it. But the moment that truly sealed his fate came in November 2021. Arnett posted an Instagram story in which he appeared to point a gun directly at the camera. In the video, he made explicit death threats. The Raiders did not wait. They released him immediately. Most players at that moment would recognize that they are standing at the edge of a cliff. Most players would step back. Damon Arnett ran toward it. In January 2022, barely 2 months after being released by the Raiders, the Kansas City Chiefs signed Arnett to a reserves/futures contract. The Chiefs made clear this was a conditional arrangement. They required intensive counseling. Zero tolerance was spelled out in terms no one could misunderstand. Arnett lasted 11 days. On January 28, 2022, Arnett was arrested in Las Vegas after allegedly pulling a gun on a valet at a casino. He was charged with 2 counts of assault with a deadly weapon, carrying a concealed weapon without a permit, and 2 counts of possession of controlled substances. The Chiefs released him before the news cycle had even fully turned. The legal process that followed dragged on for more than a year and a half. In August 2023, Arnett pleaded guilty to misdemeanor charges of assault and drawing a deadly weapon. He was fined $2,500, ordered to complete 50 hours of community service, and barred from possessing a firearm or associating with anyone who does. He was also, by then, out of professional football entirely. The arc of Damon Arnett's story is not one of villainy. It's one of a young man who, despite every resource the NFL could make available, money, counseling, second chances, could not escape the decisions that kept pulling him back. Whether that reflects a failure of personal accountability, a failure of the systems designed to support players, or something in the environment that the league has never truly reckoned with. That's a question worth sitting with. Because Arnett is not unique. He is, unfortunately, a type. And the NFL produces that type with regularity. Next, Quinnen Williams. Not every weapons arrest in the NFL involves violence. Not every case involves a player making a reckless, dangerous decision. Some cases, and this one matters precisely because it's different, involve the kind of bureaucratic and logistical failure that can ruin a life in a state with strict gun laws. In March 2020, New York Jets defensive tackle Quinnen Williams, the 3rd overall pick in the 2019 draft, was attempting to board a flight at LaGuardia Airport. During a security screening, a loaded handgun was detected in his bag. He was arrested on the spot. Here is where this case gets complicated. Williams did have a permit for his handgun. The problem was where he was going. His permit covered the state where it was issued, but not New York. New York has some of the most stringent gun laws in the country. A concealed carry permit from another state does not automatically grant the right to carry a weapon in New York. Williams was, by the letter of the law, in illegal possession of a firearm in the state of New York. Williams cooperated fully with law enforcement. His legal team moved quickly. In October 2020, 7 months after his arrest, Williams accepted a plea deal. The weapons charges were dropped entirely. He was convicted instead of disorderly conduct, which in New York is a violation, not a criminal offense. He was required to obtain proper New York licensing for his weapon. That was it. Williams went on to become one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. Here in a massive contract extension, the arrest became a footnote rather than a career-defining moment. But consider how differently this story could have ended. If Williams had not had excellent legal representation, if he had been less cooperative with officers, if the court had decided to make an example of him, the entire trajectory of his professional life could have been destroyed by a paperwork error. The Williams case is a reminder of something important. Not every weapons arrest is the same. Some involve genuine danger and deliberate violence. Some involve administrative failures in a patchwork of gun laws that vary dramatically from state to state. The difference matters, both morally and legally. And yet, from the outside, from a headline, they often look identical. Next, Marshon Lattimore. Marshon Lattimore arrived in the NFL in 2017 as one of the most hyped cornerbacks in a generation. A first-round pick out of Ohio State. An immediate starter for the New Orleans Saints. Defensive Rookie of the Year in his debut season. For years, Lattimore was considered one of the best cornerbacks in football, but his off-field story has been anything but clean. The most significant chapter began in 2021. Lattimore was stopped by police in Cleveland, Ohio. Officers discovered a firearm in his possession. The weapon, according to reports, had been stolen. That detail matters. The legal and moral weight of carrying a stolen firearm is different from carrying an unlicensed one. It raises questions not just about judgment, but about the circles a player is moving in and the choices being made far from the practice field. The Lattimore story didn't end there. In January 2026, after he had been traded to the Washington Commanders, Lattimore was arrested again in Lakewood, Ohio. This time, the charge was improperly handling firearms in a motor vehicle, a felony under Ohio law. He was also charged with carrying concealed weapons. The Commanders released a statement. The league opened an investigation. Lattimore was 29 years old at the time of his second arrest, still in his athletic prime, still capable of playing at a high level. But with a second weapons-related incident now on his record, his future in the league, and potentially his freedom, hang in genuine uncertainty. The Lattimore case illustrates one of the most frustrating dynamics in the NFL's relationship with player conduct. The league has mechanisms for punishment, suspensions, fines, mandatory counseling programs. But none of those mechanisms appear to have interrupted the pattern. He was arrested in 2021. The system's engaged. He continued playing. He was arrested again in 2026. At what point does intervention become something more than a form letter and a mandatory seminar? That question doesn't have a comfortable answer. Next, Duane Brown. In July 2022, Duane Brown, a 5-time Pro Bowl tackle who had just wrapped up 5 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks and was a free agent at the time, was going through the TSA security checkpoint at Terminal 6 of Los Angeles International Airport. During the standard bag screening, officers discovered a concealed firearm in his luggage. According to law enforcement, the gun was unloaded. Brown was taken into custody, transported to LAPD's Pacific Division for booking, and held for more than 9 hours before posting $10,000 in bail just before midnight. He was formally charged with 1 count of carrying a concealed weapon, a misdemeanor under California law that nonetheless carries a maximum penalty of up to a year in jail. Brown's attorney was direct about the explanation. This wasn't an attempt to smuggle anything anywhere. It was a packing mistake, an unloaded gun left in a bag that should have been checked differently or declared up front. Brown himself, through his legal team, described the entire incident as exactly that, an accident, and said he intended to keep being a responsible, law-abiding gun owner going forward and continue educating himself on proper firearm safety procedures while traveling. What makes the Dwayne Brown case such a clean example for this video is how mundane the actual moment was. No nightclub, no scuffle, no high-speed chase. Just a standard security line, a routine bag scan, and a 36-year-old future Hall of Fame candidate suddenly being walked out of an airport in handcuffs in front of a crowd of strangers filming on their phones. That's the modern reality for NFL players carrying firearms while traveling. Even total compliance with security procedures, just showing up and going through the scanner like everyone else, can end in arrest if the paperwork on that gun doesn't match the city you're standing in. Next, Ed Oliver. In May 2020, Buffalo Bills defensive tackle Ed Oliver, the 9th overall pick in the previous year's draft, was driving through a construction zone on a highway near Houston when another motorist called 911, reporting that his pickup truck was swerving and driving dangerously. A deputy pulled him over. Oliver had an open beer can between his legs. A field sobriety test followed, and the officer administering it noted he seemed impaired, possibly by something other than alcohol. During the stop, deputies also found a pistol in the vehicle. Oliver was arrested and charged with 2 misdemeanors: driving while intoxicated and unlawful possession of a firearm. Under Texas law, carrying a handgun in your own vehicle is generally legal, but it becomes a crime if you're doing it while intoxicated or in the middle of committing another offense. That's exactly the bind Oliver found himself in. The gun charge existed only because of the DWI allegation sitting next to it. 2 months later, the entire case collapsed. Oliver's blood test results came back completely clean. No alcohol, no drugs, nothing in his system at all. With the intoxication element gone, prosecutors had no basis left to pursue the DWI charge, and the weapon charge was automatically dismissed right along with it, since it's only illegal to carry that pistol if you're impaired or breaking another law in the process. Both charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. Oliver didn't hide his frustration about it afterward. He said publicly that the whole situation never felt right to him, and that getting arrested despite blowing a 0 on the breathalyzer made him realize that even when you're completely innocent, you can still end up spending a night in jail over nothing. It's a sobering reminder that not every name on this list represents an actual crime. Some of them represent a deputy on a dark highway making a split-second call that simply turned out to be wrong. Next, David Moore. In July 2022, Chicago Bears wide receiver David Moore was found by police asleep behind the wheel of his pickup truck, sitting in the middle of a Taco Bell drive-thru line in his hometown of Gainesville, Texas, at around 11 at night. Officers approached, detected the smell of marijuana, and searched the vehicle. Inside, they found a package of THC edible candies and 3 separate pistols. Moore was arrested and charged with possession of a controlled substance and unlawful carrying of weapons. He posted a $5,000 bond and was released from the Cook County Jail that same day. What's notable here isn't really the legal outcome. The case moved through the system fairly quietly. It's the sheer volume of firearms involved in what started as a welfare check on a man asleep in a fast food line. 3 pistols in 1 vehicle is well beyond the 1 gun for personal protection pattern we've seen in most of the other cases on this list, and it landed more in the headlines as the 3rd Chicago Bears player arrested that single off-season, a statistic that says less about David Moore specifically and more about how routine these incidents had become for NFL front offices by 2022. Next, Sher Smith. Our final individual case shows how quickly a routine traffic stop can spiral when there's a firearm in the car. In March 2022, Carolina Panthers wide receiver Sher Smith, a 6th-round pick out of South Carolina, just entering his 2nd NFL season, was pulled over on U.S. Highway 176 for driving 86 miles per hour in a 55-mile-per-hour zone. The deputy who stopped him noticed the smell of marijuana coming from inside the car. That led to a search, and the search led to an arrest on 3 separate charges: unlawful carrying of a handgun, possession of a narcotic with intent to distribute, and speeding. Smith was released on a combined $6,000 in bond and was scheduled to appear in court during the same week as the Panthers' off-season minicamp. Unlike most of the other cases on this list, Smith's story ended with something closer to a second chance than a punishment. South Carolina's local solicitor offered him a diversion program months later, citing his young age and clean prior record. If Smith completed it, all of the charges, the gun, the drugs, the speeding, would be wiped from his record entirely. Smith wrote a letter acknowledging his mistake and thanking the solicitor's office for the opportunity, expressing that he was looking forward to coming out the other side of the process a better person. It's a relatively quiet ending compared to Plaxico Burress walking into a state prison, but it's also a reminder that for a lot of these younger, lower-profile players, the system has more flexibility built in than people assume, especially when no one gets hurt and the player's record was otherwise clean. We started this video with a simple observation. Some of the most talented athletes in the world have thrown everything away. Not for drugs, not for gambling, but for guns. And after everything we've walked through, the cases, the patterns, the systemic failures, the human realities, the observation still stands. But sits differently now. What we do with all of this? As fans, we can demand more than a 2-game suspension when a player with a history of gun arrests is arrested again. We can ask harder questions of the league, not just when the cameras are on, but when the next contract is signed and the next press release lands. We can refuse to accept that this is simply the cost of doing business in a league this size. And perhaps most importantly, we can remember that the players in these stories are not characters in a highlight reel. They are human beings navigating a world that most of us will never fully understand. That doesn't make the decisions right, but it might make us better at asking the right questions about why those decisions keep getting made. Thanks for watching. If this video gave you something to think about, drop a comment below. We read every one, and if you want more deep dives into the stories the NFL would rather you forgot, you know where to find us.